For my graduation, my mom and brother kept saying, "We've got something special planned." On the big day, they never showed up. Instead, they posted photos from a beach resort with the caption, "She'll understand." I didn't say a word, but after I shared a picture with my dad's side, I got over 200 messages. Hi Reddit. I'm 22F, and until recently, I thought that if I kept my head down, worked hard, and didn't cause trouble, maybe, just maybe, my family would start treating me the way they always treated my brother. This story is about the day I graduated college. But really, it starts much earlier than that. I grew up in a small town that looked picturesque on the outside, quiet streets, trimmed lawns, polite neighbors. But our house always felt like it was balancing on a knife's edge. My mom, Celine, had a talent for putting on a perfect face in public. At school events or church functions, she came off as warm, involved, even charming. But at home, things were different. She was the kind of parent who didn't yell or throw things. No, her method was quieter, sharper. She'd guilt you into believing you were the problem, even when you were just a kid trying to understand why nothing you did was ever enough. And then there was Levi, my older brother by 2 years. He could do no wrong in her eyes. He got C's in high school, skipped classes, and came home late without explanation. Celine always had an excuse ready. He's under a lot of pressure, or he just needs time to find himself. But if I came home 10 minutes late from the library, suddenly I was irresponsible, thoughtless, and didn't care about her peace of mind. I spent most of my teenage years chasing gold stars I never received. Straight A's, perfect attendance, volunteering on weekends, part-time jobs, none of it ever seemed to make a dent. Celine would nod vaguely when I shared good news, sometimes offer a quiet "that's nice," but nothing like the way she lit up when Levi said he might try starting a YouTube channel or talked about his latest idea for a business he never followed through on. Still, I told myself things would be different once I got into college. I got accepted to a good state school on a full academic scholarship. I packed my things and left for campus with a mix of relief and guilt. I didn't hear from Celine often during that first semester. She'd send the occasional text, mostly about bills or asking if I needed money, which I didn't, thankfully. I had 2 part-time jobs in a very tight budget, but I managed. I didn't come home much during those 3 years. When I did, I usually ended up regretting it. I once brought up something my dad had said during one of our rare phone calls, nothing even controversial, and Celine immediately changed the subject, then left the room. Levi told me I should be more grateful. "You don't know what Mom went through after he left," he said. "She stayed for us." Except, it never really felt like she stayed for me. It always felt like I was just part of the background. Still, when senior year rolled around, I decided I wanted them at my graduation. I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe I just hoped, after everything, they'd finally see me. Not as the kid who followed the rules and kept quiet, but as someone worth showing up for. I didn't expect a parade. I didn't need balloons or a dinner reservation or some huge celebration. I just wanted them in the crowd. About 3 weeks before graduation, Celine started hinting at something. It was subtle at first. One night, during one of our rare phone calls, she said, "Don't make too many plans after the ceremony. Levi and I have something special planned for you." I remember freezing, my phone pressed against my cheek as I stared at the ceiling of my tiny apartment. Something special? That didn't sound like her. Not toward me. "What kind of special?" I asked. "You'll see," she said, in a tone that was almost sing-songy. "We wanted to do something a little different. You've worked so hard, and we're proud." That word, proud, sent a strange feeling through me. It was like hearing a song you loved as a child but hadn't listened to in years. I wanted to believe it. I clung to it. Even though my instincts told me to be cautious, I let myself hope. Levi was no help either. A few days later, he texted me out of nowhere. "Don't book anything for after graduation. Just trust us. It's going to be big." I asked him what he meant, and he only replied with a winking emoji, which didn't exactly ease my nerves. But again, I held on to the idea that maybe this time they really meant it. In the final week before graduation, Celine called me 3 times. That was more than she had all semester. Each call ended with her saying some variation of, "Just wait. You're going to love it. We can't wait to see your face." I started imagining what it could be. Maybe they booked a small dinner somewhere? Maybe they were bringing some extended family I hadn't seen in years? Or maybe they were finally going to say the words I'd been waiting to hear since I was old enough to notice I wasn't the favorite. The night before graduation, my dad flew in. That's another story altogether. He left when I was 9, and we didn't talk for years. But sometime during sophomore year, he reached out. I was cautious, but slowly, carefully, we started rebuilding something. He's not perfect, and there are still things we don't talk about, but he's made an effort. More than I can say for the others. He and his wife, Kendra, who's actually pretty nice, booked a hotel near campus. We met for dinner at a quiet restaurant and talked about the ceremony. He seemed nervous, like he wasn't sure how welcome he'd be. I reassured him. Mom and Levi said they've got something planned, I told him, stirring my tea. So I'm guessing they'll show up at the ceremony and do whatever this mystery surprise is. He raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything at first. Then, carefully, he asked, "Did they tell you what it is?" "Nope. Just said it was special. And to trust them." He looked down at his plate for a moment, then nodded. "All right. Well, I'll be there." 3rd row, left side. The next morning, I woke up early. I had laid my outfit out the night before, checked and rechecked the time of the ceremony, confirmed the venue. I did my makeup slowly, carefully. For once, I wanted to feel like someone worth celebrating. At 8:14 a.m., I got a message from my mom. Something came up. "We'll explain later. You're going to be amazing. Love you." I stared at the screen. Just stared, like maybe if I kept looking, the real message would load after that one. Maybe she'd follow it with, "Just kidding, we're already on campus." But nothing came. I checked the timestamp again. I hadn't misread it. No calls. No voicemails. Just that one line, vague and final. My hands felt cold. I sat down at the edge of the bed in my cap and gown, staring down at my lap. My shoes weren't even on yet. It felt like someone had suddenly taken the air out of the room. I hadn't cried, not yet. I just felt stopped. Kendra knocked gently on the door. "You ready, Hannah?" she asked. I took a breath and stood up. "Yeah, just need to grab my shoes." She didn't ask if I was okay. I think she could tell. Her eyes lingered on me a little longer than usual, like she was trying to offer something, maybe comfort, maybe just acknowledgement, but didn't want to intrude. The drive to campus was quiet. My dad drove. He made a few comments here and there about the weather, the traffic, how many people were probably attending. I nodded along, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. I kept glancing at my phone. Nothing from Levi. No update. No apology. We arrived early enough to find parking without trouble. Other families were streaming in, dads in too tight suits, moms carrying flowers, younger siblings waving signs. Everywhere I looked, there were people laughing, hugging, taking selfies in front of the campus fountain. It was loud and full of motion, but all I felt was stillness. The graduates were supposed to line up behind the auditorium, so I hugged my dad and Kendra goodbye for the moment and joined the others. My friends were there, Kayla, Jonah, and a few others from my business ethics class. Kayla ran up and gave me a hug. "You look amazing," she said, eyes wide. "Your mom here yet?" I froze for half a second before forcing a smile. "She's running late, but she said she'll be here." Kayla didn't pick up on it, thankfully. She just smiled and turned to adjust her tassel. The line started moving. We filed in row by row to the music I'd heard 1,000 times in movies but never in person. The lights were bright, the stage stretched wide in front of us, and the crowd, oh, the crowd. That was what hit me hardest. I scanned the rows automatically. There were so many people, so many faces blurred together in claps and flashes of cameras. I spotted Kendra first, waving, smiling. My dad next to her, standing out a little in his gray blazer and still hesitant grin. He waved too, but slowly, like he didn't want to draw too much attention. No sign of Celine. No sign of Levi. The ceremony itself was a blur. Names were called, cheers rang out, the occasional cowbell or air horn breaking through the formalities. When my name was called, I walked across the stage, shook the dean's hand, and tried to smile for the photographer waiting at the end. It felt like I was walking through fog. Afterward, outside the auditorium, my dad wrapped me in a hug that lasted longer than any hug I'd had from him before. I let myself lean into it, just for a moment. Kendra took pictures, making me laugh when she made my dad retake one because he blinked. We went to lunch at a quiet little place near campus, the kind with creaky wooden floors and mismatched chairs. They had a simple menu: sandwiches, soups, fresh lemonade. The kind of place that felt like it knew who it was. Halfway through the meal, I pulled out my phone again, not expecting much. But I had notifications. Several. Instagram, Facebook, even a few from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Confused, I opened Instagram first. The post at the top of my feed made my heart sink. There they were, Celine and Levi, reclined on beach chairs, sunglasses on, blue ocean in the background. Her feet were half buried in white sand. Levi had his usual smirk on his face like he'd just told a joke only he found funny. They looked completely relaxed. Not a trace of urgency, not a hint of remorse. The caption? Sometimes the best gift is peace. She'll understand. I didn't move. I didn't speak. My hands were frozen around my phone. The restaurant noise faded. I didn't even feel angry, not yet. Just empty. My dad must have noticed something shift in my expression because he paused mid-bite. "You okay?" he asked gently. I locked my phone and forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." He gave me a look, half skeptical, half understanding, but didn't push. I was grateful for that. I didn't post anything right away. I didn't know what to say. But that night, after I'd taken off the cap and gown and washed off my makeup, I sat on the edge of my bed again and opened the photo Kendra had taken. Me and my dad. Me, holding my diploma folder. Him, arms slung around my shoulder, both of us smiling in front of the restaurant window. There was something quietly beautiful about it. Honest. So I posted it. No tags. No long caption. Just, grateful for the people who show up. I didn't think much of it. I set my phone down and went to brush my teeth. When I came back, there were over a dozen comments. An hour later, I had over 60 messages. By morning, it was over 200. Some were from extended family, people I hadn't seen in years. Others were from friends, old classmates, even Levi's high school buddy I barely knew. All of them had something to say. And then, one comment stood out. It was from Celine's account. "We were doing what we thought was best. You don't have to make this public." I read it once. Twice. My heart began to pound, not with sadness this time, but something else. Heavier. Sharper. The dam had cracked. And then the phone rang again. It wasn't a call. It was a message from Levi. I didn't open Levi's message right away. Instead, I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the notification like it might burn me if I touched it. I was trying to brace myself for whatever version of the truth he thought I was ready to hear. Maybe he was going to say it was a last-minute trip. Maybe he'd pretend it was all Celine's idea. Or maybe, what I feared more than I'd admit, maybe he'd act like none of it was a big deal. Like I was being dramatic. Eventually, I opened it. "Hey, look, don't blow this out of proportion. Mom and I needed a break. We knew you'd be with Dad anyway, and you didn't even sound that excited when we told you we had plans. It's not like we promised anything. You always take things so personally." I sat there for a long time after reading that. Not angry, not crying, just quiet. It was like a switch flipped. His words were so casual, so dismissive, like my graduation was just another event on the calendar that he could skip if the weather looked better somewhere else. And then I thought about how hard I had worked to get to that day. How many nights I spent in the library until it closed. How many shifts I picked up. How I learned to stretch $20 across a week when my campus meal plan ran out. Every sacrifice, every hour spent grinding, not just for the degree, but for them, for their approval. And then I thought about the caption again. "She'll understand." No, I wouldn't. That was the moment I realized I wasn't waiting for them to change anymore. I wasn't sure what to do next, not exactly. But I knew I couldn't let them brush this under the rug, not like everything else. I wasn't looking for some childish gotcha moment. I didn't want a screaming match. I wanted clarity. And if I couldn't get that from them, I was going to create it for myself. So I started digging. The first thing I did was go through the messages I'd received. Some were supportive, people saying they were proud, telling me I deserved better. But a few caught my attention for different reasons. One was from my Aunt Liana, my mom's younger sister. We hadn't talked much since I left for college. She lived a few towns over and had always seemed kind, if a bit distant. Her message was short: "If you ever want to know what really happened with your dad, call me." That line hit harder than I expected. I hadn't thought about the divorce in years, not really. All I knew was what Celine told us, that Dad had left when I was 9 because he didn't want to deal with responsibility anymore. She never gave details. Levi had repeated it so often it became our family's version of history. I hesitated for a full day before calling Liana. She picked up on the third ring. "I was hoping you would." We talked for 2 hours. I won't spill everything she said yet. Some of it I'm still processing, but what she told me reshaped everything I thought I knew. About my dad, about my mom, about the money that had mysteriously gone missing during my last year of high school, about why Celine had never wanted me to spend weekends with my dad after the divorce, even when the court allowed it. When I hung up, I sat on the floor with my phone in my lap and stared at the wall. And then I started writing. Not a tell-all post. Not some revenge-fueled rant. Just my side of the story. The one I had never been allowed to tell. It started as a private letter. Then it became a document. Then a collection of memories, screenshots, photos, texts, all the pieces I had ignored or pushed aside over the years. I didn't know exactly what I would do with it yet, but putting it together made me feel something I hadn't felt around my family in a long time: control. A week passed. I didn't respond to Celine's comment. I didn't answer Levi's follow-up message. "Seriously? You're going to make a scene over one day?" I let the silence stretch. And I think that made them nervous. Because that's when the calls started. First from Celine. Then from Levi. Then from a number I didn't recognize, but that turned out to be my Uncle Grant. They all said the same things in different ways. "You need to let this go. You're being unfair. We're family. This isn't how you handle things." And then came the kicker from Celine herself. "I hope you're not thinking of turning people against us. That wouldn't be very mature, would it?" I remember reading that text and finally feeling something I hadn't allowed myself to feel until then. Power. Not revenge. Not yet. But the possibility of it. Because while they'd been living in this carefully crafted world of half-truths and control, I'd been watching, documenting, growing. And now I had something they didn't expect: proof, perspective, and people, more people than they realized, who were watching, listening, and ready to stand behind me. The turning point came when Celine posted again. I hadn't been expecting it. It had been a few weeks of radio silence from her, and I'd convinced myself that maybe, just maybe, she realized the gravity of what she'd done. The post came through late one night. It was a photo of her and Levi, on a private yacht this time, their arms draped over the back of the boat, smiling like everything was just fine. The caption, though, was the real blow. "Some things are just too important to sacrifice for drama. We're doing what's best for us." I stared at the screen for a long time, and when I finally set my phone down, I realized I was done. This wasn't just about one day. This was about how I had always been dismissed in favor of whatever suited them. How they had played me like a pawn in their little power struggle. I made the decision then. I was going to share the truth. The whole truth. All of it. The next day, I sat down with my laptop and began compiling everything. The photos, the text messages, the receipts from the last few years that showed the money transfers between my mom and Levi, the emails where my mom made it clear how much she resented me for not following in her footsteps. I even included the call from Aunt Liana, the one where she spilled the details about what had really gone down during the divorce, the fact that my dad had been cut out of the picture not because of irresponsibility, but because Celine had decided to hold on to the control. I spent the next few days gathering a few other things, messages from friends who had seen the way Levi would talk down to me when no one was looking, the times my mom had canceled plans with me to prioritize whatever business venture Levi was caught up in at the moment. I didn't need to be petty, I just needed to lay out the facts. And then, finally, I wrote my post. It wasn't a public call-out. I didn't want to sink to their level. Instead, I shared everything with close friends, extended family, and acquaintances who had been reaching out during my graduation. It was a story of how I had felt invisible in my own family, how my graduation, one of the most important milestones of my life, had been brushed off with a quick message, and how, despite it all, I was choosing to take control of my future. I didn't mention my mom or Levi directly. I didn't have to. Everyone knew who I was talking about. Within hours, the messages started pouring in. People were shocked. People were angry. And surprisingly, people were supportive. I had opened up a floodgate I never could have predicted. Friends from college who I thought were casual acquaintances messaged me to say they'd never known how much I'd been through. My old high school teachers reached out, saying they had always admired my work ethic but never knew the full story behind it. And then there was my Aunt Liana, who called me immediately. "You did the right thing," she said. "I don't know if I could have done it myself. But now you've got your voice back." The hardest part came when I got a call from Levi. I hadn't answered his messages before, but now he was calling. I hesitated for a moment, knowing what it would mean to talk to him. But I answered. "What is wrong with you?" he demanded, his voice tight and angry. "You didn't have to air all our dirty laundry. You've made this into something it's not. I told you we're doing what's best for us. Why can't you just accept that?" I didn't let him continue. "You don't get it, do you?" I said, my voice steady. "This wasn't about drama. This was about me. And you've never once cared. You always put yourself and Mom first. You never cared about how I was affected, as long as it made your lives easier." There was a long pause on the other end, then a sharp exhale. "Fine," he said, his voice suddenly softer. "I don't know what you expect from me, but this isn't something I'm going to apologize for." That was when I knew I was done. No more pretending. No more hoping. I hung up, not feeling relief, but something else. A sense of finality. It wasn't long before I heard from Celine. She called twice. I didn't pick up. The third time, she sent a message, her tone so different from before. It was a long message, longer than anything she had ever written before. She apologized in a way. She acknowledged that maybe she'd been wrong to leave me out, to prioritize her relationship with Levi over her daughter. But she never truly took responsibility for what she had done. She said she was just trying to move forward and hoped I would too. I didn't respond to that message. I just let it sit in my inbox. A few days passed before my dad called me. He hadn't been involved in any of the drama, but I could tell he was conflicted. He asked if I was okay and told me that he was proud of me. I didn't say much at first, but eventually I told him everything. I didn't hold back. I told him about Celine's behavior, the lies I'd uncovered, how my whole life I'd felt like I had to prove my worth just to be seen. He listened. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he told me that he would always be there for me, no matter what happened with Celine and Levi. And for the first time in years, I felt like he meant it. The situation didn't resolve in the way I thought it would. Celine never came around with a heartfelt apology. Levi didn't change, either. But something had shifted in me. I no longer felt powerless. I no longer needed their approval to feel validated. I had done the hard work, both academically and emotionally, to get to where I was. I didn't hear from them much after that. The occasional message from Levi, a vague one from Celine. But I stopped checking my phone obsessively, waiting for them to come around. Instead, I focused on my future. I had a job lined up after graduation. I was moving to a new city soon, starting fresh, with no more expectations from them. In the end, I realized the best revenge was living well. Moving forward, creating a life for myself that had nothing to do with them. I didn't need their approval anymore. And that was all I had ever really wanted.